Hi everyone, my name is Yichao Yang. I'm the software engineer from Uber Cadence team, and I will present a newly released feature this year called workflow shadowing. This feature is for detecting breaking changes in early stages of the development cycle. So before diving into the problem, let's first understand how Cadence works and what breaking change means in Cadence world. So we all know that Cadence is a fault tolerant code platform, and that achieves through event source. So to better understand it, let's go through this simple example. Consider there's a very simple driver onboarding workflow, and we want to gather some documents from the applicant and then run a background check and then return the result. As the workflow runs, the following workflow history will be generated and records the result of each step in this workflow. If your machine or your worker dies within this workflow, the history combined with the workflow code can be used to rebuild the workflow state, and the progress can be resumed from the middle of the workflow instead of running the whole workflow from the very beginning. And we call this rebuild and rebuild progress process workflow replay. What if we want to build a new feature that requires an extra workflow step? For example, in this case, we want to manually confirm the gather docs before running the background check step. For normal code, we can just add an extra line of code, but it won't work for Cadence. This is because during workflow replay, Cadence will find that the history, which says the background check activity no longer matches the new validation activity. So the Cadence cannot rebuild the workflow state anymore. And we call this kind of change breaking changes or indeterminate changes. And whenever it happens, the workflow execution will either get blocked or get terminated based on the policy you specified when starting this workflow. So in this simple case, adding activity is relatively easy to catch during code review or peer reviews. But there are more subtle cases, for example, like accidentally making an RPC call or trying to iterate through a map in the workflow code. Those operations are also not deterministic and it's harder to catch during a code review. So Cadence does provide a get version API for making such breaking changes. However, it requires workflow author to first have deeper understanding of Cadence in order to tell if this change is actually breaking or not, and then call this API. So instead of relying on the user to discover that, we want to help our customer to automatically detect such breaking changes before the code rolled out in production and cause incidents. Why this is an important problem? We did an internal survey, and almost 100% of the important customers in our inside Uber indicate that they have encountered such indeterminate cases in production, and it has caused more than 6 critical incidents in the past year. The reason behind those two numbers are actually simple to understand. First, it's very hard for our user to tell when this get version API is needed. We've got more than 20 internal Stack Overflow questions regarding that, and we also got those questions from time to time in our internal support channels. Second, once this issue happens in production, it's very hard to mitigate. Simply rolling back the deployment will actually make the situation worse, because workflow history generated by the new workflow code after rollback will again be incompatible with the previous workflow definition. So rollback will only make things worse. So how do we solve this problem? Our philosophy for solving it is to help our customer increase their competency level that is no breaking changes as the code moves closer to the production environment. Remember that non-deterministic error happens when history no longer matches the workflow code during replay. And if we think about it, theoretically, we already have everything we need to tell whether or not it's breaking. So Cadence server stores workflow history and workflow code. The definition is on your laptop. Our client library, both Go and Java, also provides a component for running the replay process and report any non-determinism. So customer can download some histories from Cadence server and then simply write a unit test using this replay component and tell whether or not this breaking changes. However, this downloading process is a manual process is very time consuming. So the natural next step is to automate this process. And to achieve that, we implement a new component called the workflow shadower to fetch workflow history from Cadence server automatically based on a custom workflow query, and run replay tests on all of them. With that, our user can easily implement an integration test that checks for hundreds or tens or hundreds of workflows and make it the required step before their code is checked in. One step further, test can still only check a small number of workflows, maybe hundreds or thousands. For very complex workflow logics that have many different code passes, some rare code passes may need a large number of workflows in order to be triggered. So this replay process may be long running, and our customer may want to replay a very large number of workflows in order to gain the confidence that there's no breaking changes. To achieve that, we also introduced a new workflow shadow mode for workers. Shadow mode is just like a never-ending integration test that is running on a server. User can deploy their new workflow code to a staging or pre-prod machine and set up that machine to run in the shadow mode and to keep replaying production workflows. If any non-deterministic workflow is found during the process, a metric will be emitted, and so that to notify users there's something wrong, and we can catch it and fix the code before the changes roll out to production. The shadowing process itself is implemented as a Cadence workflow, so there's no need to worry about host failures or restart during the long-running shadow process. And the whole shadow process can even be running for days. So as this is a general solution for preventing breaking changes in production and can be easily integrated into existing CI/CD pipelines because we have the metrics, we anticipate more and more Cadence users will start looking into it and start to use it and reduce their costs in testing, investigating, and mitigating production and deterministic issues. So if you are interested in this feature, you can check out our Go and Java client documentation and to learn more and get started. We also have code samples available there. Cool. Thank you. That's my talk for the workflow shadowing.